Welcome, everybody. I'm Village Trustee Vanessa Bertozzi, and today we're here to celebrate all that we have accomplished together in the Village Compost pilot and to talk about future plans. I wanted to start with a thank you to, especially to my compost subcommittee that literally has been working on this project for years, including all the research we did before launching the pilot. It's a great group of people who have just been tireless advocates for this project. So thank you especially to Mary Burns and Dorna Schroeder, Catherine Kaleffer, Liz Roth, and Aurora Stanek. And we had other folks who were part of the subcommittee and helped in the past, though they've dipped out of the project. Dorothy Crane, Lawrence Miller, who's been a great volunteer for us. Thank you for being here, Lawrence. Corinna Borden, Caroline Morton, and Sue C. This subcommittee is a function of the larger Climate Smart Community Task Force that we run in the village. We also wanted to thank our Harling partner, the Ozone. This is a picture of Amelia Laguerre and her employee James. James is the one who was typically driving our compost, our food scraps in this really cool converted blue school bus that they customized. So if you never get a chance to see the school bus in action, this is what it looks like. Okay, so I'm going to start off the presentation with what we've accomplished, kind of a recap of what we all did together, and then we'll go into what we have planned for the future, and then we can do discussion at the end. And when I say what we accomplished, I really mean you all, as well as our amazing volunteers. This pilot was all about all of us changing our habits and diverting food scraps from the landfill. Going back to the preliminary phase of this, it was about identifying goals for what we were going to try to accomplish. We wanted this to be an experiment to see if we could get 100 households to divert their food scraps and to get into the habit of dropping them off at a centralized collection site. And it was also an experiment in sort of building a brand and rallying around that cause. So that it would feel more like a community effort. So I feel like at the end of the day, we were hoping that we would, if we encountered any challenges, we'd be able to work out those kinks and learn from those challenges, and then see if this could really take off. So in terms of participation, we did get 100 households signed up. That's tantamount to about 10% of the village households. I think there's about 1,200 households in the village. And our goal was to get between 5 to 10 businesses to also take part, focusing on, of course, restaurants and cafes and such. And we were able to do that. And we got to the point where we were diverting about 2 tons per month, which is the equivalent of about taking 10 cars off the road. These are the businesses that ended up taking part. We did give them a vinyl window decal so that they could, tout their participation to the general public. We felt like that was important to help even spread the awareness beyond just residents to whomever their clientele is. And we had, mostly these are, there's a food market and restaurants and coffee shops, but we also had JSA, which is, I think Leola is here with us today. JSA is an office, it's a financial business with an office, but they piloted this this way of providing kind of a green office perk to their workers. Their workers were able to bring in their food scraps from home into the office and dump into their collection bin. And then JSA was also working with Upstate Films to try to get Upstate Films, any excess popcorn or other food products from the theater, for those to be composted as well. So just a word about these businesses, because obviously, like, if you can get the business community on board, that's making a big dent, especially the ones that specialize in food. Generally, these businesses, were hesitant to get on board because they run they run really on a very thin margin. And so, and staffing was also a challenge in this kind of pandemic era that we're in. And so training staff when you're already running things pretty tight is a difficult thing to do. So we really do applaud them for undertaking this and changing their workflows in the back of house, which is not easy. And we hope that they continue on with their contracts with the ozone. They are not being subsidized with taxpayer money. They're paying their own full freight with a commercial contract directly with the ozone. So really do, if you go into any of these businesses, please thank them for taking part, because it's a pretty heavy lift for them.
Can Vanessa, can you tell us what kind of what they paid to do it, particularly
Sure.
restaurants?
So the commercial rates are about $90 a month for the first bin. And then if they added a second or a third bin, it would be incrementally $17 on top of that. And obviously their volume varies from business to business. So, the number of bins that they have varies. The commercial rates are also available on the ozone, if you want to check that out. In terms of the household participation, we did recruit 100 households, and one of the things we learned was that our initial estimation of how much volume of food scraps we would be diverting turned out to be less than what I had estimated. What we had estimated with our P2I feasibility study. We had done a feasibility study with some estimations in partnership with RIT and the Pollution Prevention Institute prior to the launch of the pilot. And I don't know, I had some ideas onto why the volume of food compost was maybe, or food scraps was less. I think it's because our households tend to skew smaller in the village. Most of our households are, a single person or a couple. It's very rare to have a household with a whole bunch of kids, just given our demographics here in the village. But nonetheless, we also thankfully had absolutely zero complaints about vermin or odor. That was something I was really, waking up in the cold sweat in the middle of the night, worrying about creating a mess in the middle of the village and upsetting neighbors. But we really did not have a problem with that over the entire pilot, which was great. And we also really didn't experience any complaints from the ozone or from our composting facility, UCRA, when it came to contamination. And by contamination, I mean we didn't have a problem with people putting non-food items or trash, regular trash, into the collection bins. So our 100 households really did a fabulous job in that regard. There weren't any unacceptable items sneaking into those bins, which was great. We also learned that we have a bunch of home composters. This was kind of a voluntary action that if you were happily home composting, you could fill out the form and let us know about that, just so we're just trying to get a sense of, were there home composters already in the village? We had over 70 households tell us that they were happily composting in their backyards. And this is great. This is actually the greenest thing you can do if you're able to compost in your own backyard. And so we encourage those folks to keep going. We shared some tips with them. We do have a compost guide for how to do it in your backyard that we shared when people requested it. So for those who are doing it in the backyard, keep doing what you're doing. 77 is, at least the number of home composters. There's probably more that we didn't happen to get in touch with. It's also interesting that, as we advertise this as a village program, because it was municipally subsidized for the village residents through our village taxes, through our village budget, but we did have a number of people fill out the form who weren't even in the village, but were in the town and really kind of wanted to be on a waiting list of some sort. And we did approach the town government to see if they'd want to join the pilot. They decided to decline for now, but may work with us in the future as we hopefully build a permanent program, and more on that later. And we did a lot of public outreach. We learned a lot about how to talk about this program, how to make people care about it. We gave talks at the New York Summit on Organics in April. We gave presentations to the Rhinebeck Rotary Club at the Thriving in Rhinebeck event that Rhinebeck at Home put on, the Science Foundation's Discovery Festival, multiple farmers markets appearances. We also had meetings with other municipalities and groups like ours that are trying to get compost going in their own towns or villages, such as Hastings-on-Hudson and Red Hook, kind of cross-promoted with Red Hook, as well as the Southlands Foundation. And this was a lot of fun, and it was good to actually get out there into the community and help spread the word. And then, as you all know, we did offer finished compost to our. Oh wait, hold on. Some people are waiting in the lobby. I'm not sure how to let them in at this point.
I think you let me in. This is Samantha.
Okay, hi Samantha.
Hello.
All right, get back to that. Okay, are you still seeing my screen, everybody?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Great. All right, so the pilot, so our food scraps were collected by the Ozone and brought over to Ulster County Resource Recovery Agency, where they were turned into compost. Now, getting our hands on that finished compost was not automatically part of the deal, but I budgeted to be able to buy back some of that finished compost and offer it to participants. I felt like, we all on the compost subcommittee felt like people should see the fruits of their labor, as it were. And so we did end up hosting these compost giveaway days for folks to come and pick up some compost for their gardens. And that was a lot of fun too. And another feature that we ended up building into the program, we had a handful of participants with low mobility, on fixed incomes, living in our Section 8 housing at Wells Manor. So we had some generous members of the community who offered to sponsor those households. And we had Lawrence, our lovely volunteer here, who volunteered to concierge for those low mobility participants at Wells Manor. So he basically would bring their food scraps for them over to the collection bins on a weekly basis.
Right, but then, nice. To be honest, that was taken over by one of the residents who I forget her name, who then said that since she had a car, she was able to get back and forth, that she would take the compost, the scraps from other residents. So.
Okay.
So, I mean, I started it, but I didn't have to go further.
The duration. Okay. Well, thanks, Lawrence. I mean, irregardless, we really value your volunteerism. So thank you. And then we did put out a check-in survey to see how people were liking the program, to get a sense of it. And most really liked it. There were a few that said, actually not for me, and some who said if we continued, they would maybe want to continue. But overall, we felt like this was a pretty overwhelming success. And so that encouraged us to extend our pilot. And so we continued on through September, October, November, and now through the end of December. And so that was a nice thing that we were able to make this pilot go even last even longer than we had initially planned for. And during that time, we also, on the village board, we voted to approve for some planning work to be done for a permanent setup. So we hired our tie-in bond, which is the engineering firm that the village board typically works with, and they created a proposal for what a municipal compost site would look like. And then in September, I actually applied for 2 grants to be able to get funding to build a permanent site. So the end of the pilot is nearing, sadly. It's at the end. We can keep dropping off our scraps till the end of December, but then sadly, those municipally subsidized bins will be going away in the new year. And I'm so sorry I wasn't able to get the grants and all the funding in place to be able to have built a municipal compost site in a more seamless fashion, where we weren't going to have a bit of a gap here before we have a permanent program. But with that said, I'll now switch over to talking about what would we like to do as a long-term plan. So as I mentioned, we did hire Tie & Bond, this engineering firm. They took a look at the Village Highway Department site. So this is the Village Highway Department, not to be confused with the Town Highway Department. Our property is basically in the corner of 308 and Violet Hill Drive. There's 2 entrances. And this entrance that you see on this site plan is the Violet Hill Drive entrance, which is right now very underutilized. So the plan that we're proposing would be to fix up this driveway and make it so it's publicly accessible. And you would come in and you would be able to drop your food scraps here for free. And then they would be composted on site with the highway staff. The system would be an ASP system. ASP stands for aerated static pile. This is the same processing system that they use over at the Ulster County Resource Recovery Agency, though it is, this would be a much smaller scale than what they have going on over at Ulster. It's basically a very easy, low maintenance, and low odor system where you build your composting piles on top of these perforated pipes that have air blowing through them, and therefore the piles of food scraps are aerated. They're oxygenated so that the microbes are happy, and we could use the mulch, which is already created at the same site. Here in the village, we have as you're probably aware of, we go around, we pick up the leaves and the brush and turn those into mulch. Some of that mulch could be used in building our composting piles, as the browns added to the food scraps. And this is the proposal that we used to submit for 2 grants. The engineers told us that to build such a facility would be about $300,000. Which made me honestly want to puke the first time I heard that figure. But apparently it's mucho dollars to get anything built these days. So that's the estimated budget. I applied for 2 grants, hoping to get the bulk of the funds. I have yet to hear back, but hoping to hear soon on whether we are awarded any of that grant money. Now, we did ask the town board if they would be interested in supporting this project or collaborating in some way, because wouldn't it be great if this facility could be free for any resident of Rhinebeck, either town or village, to take advantage of? And the town board, they did give me letters of support for those grant applications, and I think it's sort of TBD how much money is needed. The town board would have to evaluate that to see if it makes sense. Their feeling is most people in the town have larger backyards, they can just compost in their backyard. So they're not sure if it's a good use of town taxpayer money, but we're, trying to make a case for it. We would also need town planning board approval to be able to use this site, because even though it's a village municipally owned piece of property, it is not within the bounds of the village, it's actually in the town. So a few more hoops to jump through there. But a permanent program, we really felt like the pilot did well in kind of reiterating or reinforcing some of our assumptions. We do feel like being able to do not just vegetable or plant-based, but also meat, dairy, and bones is important. It's important for residents. It's important for restaurants and other businesses. And we need it to be low maintenance, low cost, and we want it to be year round. We don't want to ask people to get into the habit of diverting their food scraps and then having to drop it and then get back on board. It's hard enough to get in the habit in the first place, so why not keep it consistent? So the idea is that this would be a free drop-off for residents. The ozone could continue to pick up bulk food scraps from restaurants and other larger customers, or even individual households who want to pay for residential pickup. And then she could dump those food scraps with us at the highway garage site, rather than going over to Ulster County. And the ozone would pay us typically a tip, what they call a tipping fee, a dumping fee, basically. That's how these sorts of composting facilities fees are structured. And then the finished compost would be for sale. So right now we do pick up yard waste. The highway department picks up yard waste, makes it into mulch, and then that is for sale through the village hall. And compost would be a similar situation where we would now have two products for sale, mulch and compost. So it would be those revenues from the sales would be offsetting the cost of staffing and labor to manage our own compost facility. But this is the plan, but as I said, it's a pretty penny to build this facility, and so we have to wait and see if we get that grant money. So with that, I'm acknowledging here we have a bit of downtime before we even know if we're going to be able to build this permanent facility. So what are we going to do in the meantime? That's the question. I'm very, very proud of our subcommittee member, Liz Roth, who's on the board of her HOA at the Woods, which is over 100 households over at the Woods, the condos over at the Woods. And the HOA board agreed to start paying for a collection bin or two right there at the Woods, specifically for Woods residents. During the pilot, we had 15 members who were residents of the Woods, and after Liz was able to launch this program, there are now 50 households that are participants. So that's fantastic. Now we've gotten the Gardens condos interested, and we've been talking with their HOA president. And it's not for certain yet, but we're hoping the Gardens will also start this sort of arrangement where they're paying a commercial contract directly to the ozone, and this is not municipally subsidized. This is using the power of the HOA board to have that commercial contract with the ozone, and then it's built into those condo fees so that anyone who lives at the woods or lives at the gardens would be able to participate in a very convenient way with their collection bins right there, kind of on campus. And for those of you who are looking to continue your own food scrap diversion, but you're not in the woods or in the gardens, you can try home composting. We do have a home compost guide. I also did some research and found that Dutchess County does offer discounted backyard composting bins for sale, so you can purchase those. I'll share the slides after this presentation as well, so you can get the links that I've provided here. And you know, our compost subcommittee, we did talk a lot about, well, you know, what are the other options for people now that the pilot is ending? We don't want to leave people in the lurch. And so we put together these other options for you to explore. The ozone does have a drop-off CSA, so you can drive up to their place of business up in Red Hook, and for $14 a month, you can drop off your own food scraps at the ozone. That's what they call their compost CSA, and I think you get compost at the end of a season. If you participate in that, you get finished compost as well. The ozone does also offer curbside pickup that you can pay for as an individual household. You know, it starts at $32 a month. And I just want to be mindful in saying, I know I'm a village trustee, I'm an elected official, and I'm not trying to put any sales push on you here. I just, the subcommittee really wanted to make sure that people are aware of possibilities. If there were other composting services in the area, I would certainly encourage you to explore them as well. So since the village budget is used up for the pilot, and that's why it's ending, I was thinking, oh, maybe there are other organizations in Rhinebeck that would like to pick up where we're leaving off. And I did reach out to some of the churches and just our library. You know, they are all nonprofit organizations, and times are tight for them as well. Rhinebeck Reformed Church did offer to host a bin if, say, you know, a small grant could be given to them to pay for the cost of having the collection bin picked up. So that's a thought. And the ozone did say that there's kind of a neighborhood co-op model that she would be willing to try out. The idea here is that a neighbor could offer to host a 32-gallon bin, just like the bins that we had at the municipal parking lot. And then if that neighbor could get, you know, 11 or 12 neighbors to take part, each paying $14 a month, that could be a new model for people to come together for some savings there, and convenience. But you would need a minimum of 12 households signing up in order to commence with the ozone. So those are just some options for what to do now that the pilot is ending. And I would love to, now we can do some Q&A, and I'd be happy to answer any questions, or maybe we could discuss if any of those options sound like they're of interest to folks. Let me stop sharing here. Lawrence, I see your hand.
I should know more about this since I work at the Morton Library, but I was reading Sandy's newsletter, and one of the things that they mentioned they offer is composting. Now, I don't even know anything about it, and I should, since I'm there. But I don't know if it's just for Rhinecliff and if people are paying for it. I don't. Are you familiar with anything they're doing at all?
I don't,
No.
but that sounds great. Would
Yeah,
you
I mean, it
ask
might be
Sandy?
connected, excuse me?
Would you ask Sandy?
Yeah, I will. No, definitely. I mean, I just literally just saw it in the last newsletter. Maybe Sue C is involved, I guess. I mean, that would kind of make sense.
Yeah, I talked to Sue the other day about these, options that we were putting together,
Mhm.
and she didn't mention it, but yeah, if you find out, let me
Yeah.
know. Leola, go ahead.
Well, first I wanted to thank you and applaud you all for making this happen, both residents as well as our committee that organized it for Rhinebeck. Just incredibly well done. And also for your work on the future, because composting locally is really where all villages need to go for a healthy future. And so your work there is incredible for next steps. So I hope it goes through. In the meanwhile, though, what I was wondering is I work for JSA, the business that provided it as an employee benefit for dropping off. And we would like to continue. And so I guess I'd like to understand if the pricing would be any different with ozone. And we also have capacity. And I know some of you folks on this line here probably are really hooked on this. And I know even when I travel, I cannot put food in the trash. I cannot. There's a better way and I won't do it. And I find a way. And so if anybody is so hooked, we would be so happy to have people drop off, maybe like the Reformed Church model. So we're sort of open to this possibility of continuing. We're under capacity right now. We don't have a lot of employees who physically come to the office. So certainly happy to, reach out to Leola at JSA if anybody really wants to keep dropping off, or just drop it off. It's okay. We have capacity.
That's fantastic. I mean, maybe you could be one of the neighbors who hosts, and folks could pay Amelia at the Ozone the $14 a month to be able to drop off with you. Yeah, I mean, that's a little bit because you're a business and you're already paying. It's a little bit of a hybrid situation. So I just want to make sure we're being mindful of the Ozone's, their financial models and stuff and their needs. But yeah, let's follow up on that, Leola. Thank you so much.
Okay, sounds great. And also for anybody who's really, really hooked, or anybody on the line who has a backyard compost, there's also something called sharewaste.com or .org. And you can put if you have a backyard compost that you're willing to accept people, putting just the regular stuff, not the bones and the meat and stuff, you may be able to find a share waste drop off. So that's one way too, because, for anybody who's hooked on composting and can't do it at home.
Thank you. Great tips. Tina.
Two things. One is we have at the community garden, as you are familiar, the composting there, which does not take the meat scraps and things like that. So it's not exactly equivalent. But I know that a number of people from the town do use it. So has that ever been part of your?
Yeah, that's a great question, Tina. And I followed up with Cecily and Sue, who are involved with the composting at the community gardens. And they wanted me to, they said, if this comes up, that ability to drop off your food scraps is mostly meant for members of the community gardens. So if folks are members of the community gardens, by all means, but they would be overwhelmed if people not part of the community gardens, start dropping off a lot of food scraps. And especially during the winter months when there's not as much microbial activity, things could get out of hand. So they did not want me to advertise that as a real option for folks, unfortunately. Yeah.
Yeah, I mentioned it and said that it's not equivalent either, but I'm a member of the community garden, and I do know that some people from the village use it, but we don't need to encourage that.
Yeah, yeah.
My other question was, have you contacted schools?
Yes, we've been talking to Albert Cousins, who's the new superintendent for the school district, and he was excited. He went so far as to talk to his staff about it. Unfortunately, he got some pushback from his facilities folks, who felt like they were taking on more work than they maybe bargained for. And so we'll keep talking to them and encouraging them to do hopefully the ozone would have like a institutional rate or something like that if she were to start working with the school district. The school district is kind of, almost think of it as a separate kind of government entity than the village government, but we've been really trying to partner with them and encourage them. So we'll continue doing that. Because that would be, that's a lot of food waste that goes through their cafeterias. Yeah, stay tuned. Hopefully
Right, and of course there's a tie-in with their educational program.
Yeah.
And I don't know if the high schools around here have a community service. I think they do, a program where students are supposed to do some kind of project for the community. Anyway, it may take a little time, but it would seem to me that is really worth gently pursuing.
Yes, absolutely. I agree. How about Julia? Julia, maybe unmute. Julia? All right, maybe she stepped away. How about Kins at People PC?
Well, somebody's unmuted, but I don't know what's going on.
Sorry, I guess you cannot hear me still?
Oh, now we can hear you.
Oh, now you can hear me. Okay.
Yes.
I'm wondering if in time you did get your own site for composting, how will that be managed? What does it take to manage a site?
Sure, yeah. And may I ask your name?
Jack Pursley.
Hi, Jack. Were you a participant in our pilot?
No, I was not.
Okay. Sorry, I just didn't recognize your name. Welcome. And so yeah, if we were to have our own municipal site, the way it works is a little bit more detail on what that site would involve. So we would construct basically a concrete pad, some sort of impermeable surface, and on that concrete pad would be a series of perforated pipes. Pipes are hooked up to blowers, basically the same blower that you use to blow up like a bouncy house at kids' birthday parties. And those blowers are housed literally into a little structure that looks like a doghouse. We might even be able to retrofit dog houses. So the blowers blow air through those perforated pipes. On top of the perforated pipes, a front end loader loads first a layer of mulch and then layers on food scraps and then another layer of mulch, basically building mounds about 4 feet by 8 feet by 8 feet. And those mounds, with the oxygenation, encourage the microbial activity that breaks down the food scraps very quickly, rising to heat of about 130 degrees. So the microbes are really doing their work cooking the food scraps quickly. And the mulch acts as insulation to keep out vermin and to keep odors in. So once it takes a matter of weeks for that activity to happen, and then the front end loader moves that pile over to a separate area where it cures, where it continues to just sit and decompose. And then once it's finished, that is finished compost, and it sits there as a pile for sale, as does our mulch. Okay. The proposal, and one of the reasons why it was so expensive, the estimated budget was so expensive, is because we're proposing a pavilion style roof over this operation to keep rain and other precipitation off of the piles, and to make it such that we don't need to do, snow plowing, I guess. The other thing you need to manage is a place where the food scraps can be dropped, and make that such that a front end loader can come in and move it once or twice a week, probably. If we have other services such as the ozone coming in to drop off already bulk aggregated food scraps, they would have an arrangement with us where they come in and drop that off for a fee. Any finished compost that's for sale would be for sale at a rate to our residents, and then if there's a commercial, say landscaper, that wants to buy that compost in bulk, they pay a different higher rate, and there's additional charges for delivery if it's outside of the village residential arrangement. Does that
Okay.
answer your question?
It does. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Julia, are you back yet? You have a question? I think you were muted. Julia, if you're around, you can pop on. Tina, were you raising your hand too?
Yeah, I was curious if all the finished mulch in the pilot program was used.
Do you mean the finished compost from the
Yeah,
pilot?
Compost, yeah.
So no, we had extra. We put out a last call for folks to come pick some up, and we had some excess. So we said that we would sell that to whomever wanted it. And I think we did get an order for, a couple yards, but there might even still be some left, but it's now for sale to the general public.
I'm just remembering it looked like an enormous pile.
It was
first time. And were there takers for all of that?
not all of that.
Yeah.
I ordered, I budgeted, I don't know, I think I budgeted like $500 because I wasn't sure how much people would want. And then I ended up getting $250 worth, which was just, I think it was like 12 yards or something. It was quite a lot. And then people didn't, we couldn't use it all up, giving it out to participants for free. Not everyone from the Village Compost pilot wanted some. Some were like, oh, you can give it to somebody else. But I should note that wasn't like a one-to-one of like how much food scraps we gave to UCRA is how much finished compost we got back. Do you know what I'm saying?
I do, yeah.
I just kind of ballparked it, figuring, oh, how much at the top end are people going to want? And maybe I overestimated a little bit. But it's good quality stuff.
Yeah, well, this is a trial to find out how much people wanted.
Yeah.
I don't think most people did it in order to get the dirt. I think most people, I would assume most people did it because They just wanted to do the right thing and, find a place for stuff not to go into landfill.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. I think it was a minority of people that were in it for the finished compost. I think it was mostly just about trying to do something better with their waste.
Hmm.
And to Leola's point, once you get in the habit of diverting your food scraps, it is so painful to have to just
Yeah.
put food scraps right back into the trash. It doesn't feel right, and it's not
I
right.
just want to throw this stuff in my backyard, but I don't think my landlord would like that very much. So, yeah, I don't know. It's vexing.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. Is there anybody on the call that would be willing to be, a neighbor host if we could get 12 people from the pilot who wanted to continue?
Does it have to be priced by the month? Because I mean, literally, it takes me months to get enough for me to I have this big bin in my refrigerator. Is that the only model you can? There's no way to pay per drop off or something.
This is the per month thing is I think the financial model that makes sense for the ozone as a business. Yeah, this is how she has structured it.
What if we brought it to ozone? I mean, to
if you bring it to the ozone, she does do some composting on site there. Her retail shop is up at Greg Farm in Red
Right.
Hook.
Yeah.
And she does do some composting on site. That's the CSA option that she offers. And to be able to drop off there, it's $14 a month.
Oh, so same as what we're pricing here.
Right. And so I was figuring, oh, well, then you don't have to drive all the way up to Red Hook if we were to do something here. It's a bit more convenient and less gas money. And I believe the option of bringing it up to the ozone for the compost CSA drop off, I believe that is no meat, no bones, no
Right.
dairy. Whereas the option of the kind of neighbor co-op option, you could include those. Hello, Julia, you're back. Do you have a question? Oh, we can hear you.
I don't hear her.
I don't either. I'm going to have to sign off, folks, but thank you so much for everything.
Okay. Bye, Lawrence. Thank you.
I'll let you know what happens with, Rhine Cliff. I'll talk to Sandy. And
Oh,
see.
yeah. Please, you let me know.
All right. Bye.
Okay. Let me see. Do we have a? Oops.
Well, we eagerly anticipate Julia's question. I hope you'll be able to speak, Julia. So I wondered, Vanessa, if you could get funding to just keep the bins going, keep the service from Rhinebeck like where it currently is, well, how much would that be?
Right. So so let me explain. There's a little bit of trickiness when it comes to running a municipal program that's not open to every taxpayer in the village, right? It gets tricky because we as the village government can't be showing preferential treatment for a subset of taxpayers. And so I think a pilot makes sense because it's got a beginning and an end, and it's like an experimental phase. So we could take just a limited number of people, but I don't think it's proper for us to continue indefinitely offering something just to a subset of the population.
Okay, so like if someone was to just pay for the bins, the hauling service, just make them available for anybody in the village to drop food scraps off, how much would that be?
Just anyone in like all 1,200 households? How
Yeah.
much would that be?
Yeah, like if you just kept, the subscription to the bins in the current place with Ozone picking it up every week, same amount of bins, for example, and just, kept it going, how much would the cost be?
Well, there's 1,200 households in the village, so if we were to open it up to all of them, I'm not sure how many would actually do it. And then it would be hard to estimate the number of bins. And we have been subsidizing it by half, right? And so if it were full freight, if the municipal or whomever were to just pay the full freight, I think it's like $370 a month per 5 bins. So times
And you had
12.
5 bins for the pilot?
We had 5 bins, yeah.
Okay,
So that
so,
would be about $4,500 a year. But that's only for 5 bins, and I don't know if that serves all 1,200 households. You know what I'm saying?
But the way the way you would know is just like the way we were doing in the woods. You start with a certain number, and then I check our bins every day. I'm kind of obsessed, and you just watch the levels, and then after a while, oh my God, we need another bin, and then you work it out that way.
That's
or
true.
like with the village, we just scaled down. We started out with how many more, Vanessa? Remember, we had more, and then we scaled it down.
Right. Yeah, we started off with like 12, but our 100 households weren't filling up all 12 bins.
Yeah, so here's my idea. You gave everyone in the village a chance to participate, and those who wanted to did. And if you just continued on the website, it's one of the lists of services that are available, drop-offs available, not any big PR to get people to participate or anything. There's just these bins that you can drop off food scraps in Rhinebeck. And so I think the folks who are currently in it would continue. And I don't know how many would really join if they didn't already. And then you could go through a big PR thing if you open your own facility to really push a whole lot more people to come in. But I don't know, just kind of wondering if we could get the funding just to keep the bins going.
Yeah, right now I don't have that money budgeted, so I'm not able to do that right now. So if we don't get the grants, maybe that's something that next budget season the village board could discuss whether to just continue paying for this third party model. Yeah.
So it's like $5,000 a year for the 5 bins. Is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
But-
Julia just texted me. She says, might there be a possibility to explore some kind of compost pods between village businesses and residents, as Leola mentioned, if a commercial contract is underutilized? That's an interesting idea, Julia. As far as I don't think the commercial bins are being underutilized, except for maybe JSA. I think the restaurants are filling theirs up. But maybe worth asking.
I'm curious, Leola, were you thinking of the bins being in the same place where they've been at the firehouse?
Yeah, and just if we could figure out, if I could find somebody to fund this, could we just keep it going for the people who've been doing it, and it would be like not discriminatory against other village residents. The bins are open, you can put stuff in. And like you said, if it seems like they're getting more full, we'd have to reevaluate or recontract, to get more bins or this sort of thing. But my guess is people aren't going to all of a sudden start participating more if it just happens to be available to everyone.
Right.
But the location of the bins, would that be, would the town, the village rather, can agree to that, keeping them where they are?
That's something that I can ask. I mean, the only complaint that we got for the duration was actually from the police department because they were concerned with the members of the public driving in. Some people drove in pretty fast. Some people drove in one way the wrong way. And, that's there's a lot of facets to that parking lot. There's the EV chargers, there's the police station parking, there's the fire department parking, there's emergency vehicles, there's village hall staff parking. And so there was a concern with adding additional traffic back there to those bins. So, but I mean, that could be a conversation.
Yeah, we were racking our brains the other day. Subcommittee was racking their brains trying to figure out where else we could place those bins in the village.
The
And
issue is that you don't want to put them right very visually in the public eye, because then you have people who literally won't pay for their own garbage collection and will instead start dumping their household garbage in it, or their doggy poop bags. Like, then it
Yeah.
becomes a problem. And what I don't want is to cause a problem, because that's when stuff just gets shut down. So that's why they were so discreetly tucked behind that shed there.
Yeah.
And that
Didn't
worked
the
out really
Methodist Church
nicely.
offer to host the bins?
The
They put it there?
the Reformed Church offered to
Reformed
host a
Church.
bin. I don't know. We didn't talk about in detail where would the bin be located. But again, I was thinking this would happen outside of the municipal government. This would be a way for us to just tell those 100 households, hey, if you want to continue on, you can get into this bin by the Rhinebeck Reformed Church, and therefore manage these issues. But Rhinebeck Reformed Church certainly doesn't have the money to pay for $100 a month or whatever it would cost.
How about Church of the Messiah and the where the food pantry pickup is, have the bins
Yeah.
there?
I asked them as well. They said that they were very hesitant because they have mice. And I tried to explain, like, we've been doing this since March and it has not been an issue. These are closed bins. They have lids. It's really not an issue. And I asked the Methodist Church as well. And these are wonderful community players. I don't want to like whine about them not wanting to take our compost bins, but they declined. They politely declined. But if you could think of any other, kind of centrally located place that could be discreet yet could be accessible to the public, that's what we're looking for. So
I think the economy of scale sort of idea, if we could get the town involved, then that would open up a whole lot.
yeah, definitely.
Mhm.
So I mean, I heard from I poked one of the grant contacts, and they said, oh, you should be hearing in a couple weeks. So fingers crossed.
That is cool.
But yeah, but that's why I mean, like, that I asked for a lot of money. $300,000 is a lot of money. So I'm nervous. And so coming up with a plan B, I think is really important. And if we can't figure that out, then I'm just like, I'm really hoping that the gardens happens, and the woods, thank goodness. So stay tuned. We'll keep you all posted. If anybody is interested in this, I mean, I personally would be willing to be the neighbor host, and then have, if I can get 12 of us on this call who want to take part, let me know.
Well, that's very generous of you, personally.
All right. Well, have a good evening, everybody. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any other brainstorms or ideas, okay?
Well, you know,
Thank
this
you.
idea of municipal composting is spreading around the country, and
Yeah.
it could be that we will get caught up in that as well, and it would just become more, people would become more aware of it and more enthusiastic.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Vanessa.
Thank you.
Okay,
Bye,
good job,
everybody.
Vanessa.
Bye.
Okay,
Thanks.
bye.